All right, in other news tonight, the president is slamming Hillary Clinton after she viciously attacked white female voters who pulled the lever for President Trump. Remember this. Take a look.
Her last statement about women, they have to get approval from their husbands, their sons, and their male bosses to vote for Trump. That was not a good statement. Not good. You notice how fast the Democrats have run from these statements now? They are disavowing those statements like I've never heard before. She's wrong. People that were her biggest supporters are now saying, what is she doing? Why doesn't she just go home? But that was not a good statement.
Very pathetic. Of course, Hillary Clinton can't stop talking and complaining about her stunning election defeat, blaming everybody. And she is once again attacking President Trump. Here's what she said in a recent interview. Pathetic. She needs to get over it.
He has undermined the office and used it to enrich himself and his family. Disregarded laws, ethical standards. He's crossed into a territory of behavior and actions that are unpredictable, that are erratic, that are undermining the stability of the global order.
Pretty outrageous. Really, Hillary, you want to talk about enriching yourself? Did you forget about the $145 million that poured into your family foundation, Bill doubling his speaking fees in Russia as it relates to, and giving the speech from Vladimir Putin and the Uranium One scandal? I have some free advice for Hillary Clinton. You may want to stop talking. There's a lot of news coming in your direction. All right, also breaking tonight, huge news to tell you about Mr. Deep State himself, James Comey, and other corrupt government officials. They should be very worried tonight. Politico is reporting the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Bob Goodlatte, he is now getting ready to issue a subpoena for documents that the DOJ Inspector General has about the corrupt FBI Clinton email investigation. 1.2 million documents. This is significant because the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, well, he's been doing everything within his power to not let the public, not let Devin Nunes and the House Intel Committee and the Judiciary Committee have access to this information. Now, the DOJ has been stonewalling congressional oversight every single step of the way. Now, why is that? Why doesn't Rod Rosenstein, why doesn't the Department of Justice want you, the American people, congressmen, it's their job to do oversight, to see all of the documents related to how poorly the Clinton email investigation was and what corruption may be underlying all of this? Now, it is because we've already known that the fix was in, that that investigation was rigged. We know James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, and other people, senior FBI officials. Remember, they were writing Hillary's exoneration months before they interviewed her and 17 other witnesses. I don't know any investigation that is handled that way. So is there a smoking gun? Is there evidence they don't want you to see? I would assume the answer is yes. Now, remember, Rod Rosenstein is the guy, he was begging Paul Ryan to stop Devin Nunes in Congress and the Intel Committee from getting the documents that showed severe FISA abuses. And, of course, the Clinton bought and paid for dossier. It's Paul Ryan. He did not give in to Rosenstein. Otherwise, if he did, there would be no Nunes memo. There would not be a Grassley-Graham memo, and we would not know anything about the Clinton bought and paid for dossier that was used to lie to the FISA court. Remember, the DOJ, the FBI, they lied to that FISA judge, well, actually 4 judges, to get the warrant. And then, of course, the extensions to spy on Trump associate Carter Page and subsequently the entire Trump campaign. And Rosenstein, he's rotten to the core because he's tied into all of this. He is doing the bidding of deep state actors. Rosenstein actually signed one or more of those FISA applications in case of the renewal. And in other words, the bulk of them were made up of the dossier. What does Rosenstein have to hide here? Why is he protecting all of his friends? Why does he have all of these conflicts of interest? And how can he be the guy that appoints Mueller and involved in the investigation when he himself engaged in potential wrongdoing? Think about that. Now, why does the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, he had to recuse himself? Rod Rosenstein, okay, he renewed the FISA application. He knew Hillary bought and paid for it. He knew the judges were being lied to. But then he gets to appoint his BFF, Robert Mueller, to be the special counsel. All of this is why we need a second special counsel. These people cannot investigate themselves. And as for those Clinton email records, the OJ Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, remember, we're waiting on his report. He has gathered 1.2 million documents, some of which are all related to this corrupt email investigation and probe. And by the way, guess how many of the 1.2 million documents Congress has been able to see? Only 3,000. Now, that is 0.25%. Well, you call that stonewalling 101. That is the deep state desperately protecting the deep state. But unfortunately, there are some members of Congress who believe in their role in oversight. There are a few journalists who actually care about truth and justice and equal application under the law and the Constitution. People willing to put themselves out there and follow the truth, the facts, the evidence. All right, also brand new tonight, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. They are joining now the chorus that is now finally calling for what we have been calling for, the appointment of a second special counsel. The facts, the evidence of wrongdoing and lawbreaking are incontrovertible and overwhelming. Here is what Congressman McCarthy is saying. Let's take a look.
So we know that McCabe has lied by the independent inspector general found it, and now he's saying about Comey may have lied as well. So I don't think this is the end of it. But that is why we need a second special counsel. And I give Chairman Gowdy and Goodlatte a lot of credit and all those members. They sent that letter to Jeff Sessions. He is looking at it. But we need the ability, because an inspector general does not have subpoena power outside of the direction. So we need somebody to look at this, and not from the inside, because you can't trust what's happening right now.
Well said, Kevin McCarthy. And Congressman Scalise, he is out with a statement. It reads in part, the credibility of the Mueller investigation will be in doubt unless we get to the bottom of the many serious questions regarding the FBI's handling of their investigation of the Trump campaign, as well as their investigation, or lack thereof, into Hillary Clinton's negligent transmission of classified material over her unauthorized email server. That's why I agree with many others. That's why we need the appointment of an additional special counsel who, unlike Mueller, has the authority to look into potential abuses of the FISA system. That allowed the Democrat-funded Steele dossier. Oh, I thought foreigners weren't supposed to impact our elections with Russian lies. But anyway, to serve the basis for the initial FBI investigation. Congressman Scalise, Congressman McCarthy, Graham, of course, and Grassley, and Tillis, and Cornyn, they're all now saying what we've been saying. Now, this goes along with every single thing we've been trying to report to you. This is why this is needed, a second special counsel. Now, Robert Mueller, interestingly, he's best friends with James Comey, and he's buddies with Rod Rosenstein. He cannot be expected to honestly investigate scandals that his friends are directly involved in. Comey is at the very center as it relates to the Clinton email fix, rigging the investigation. And Comey said that the Clinton dossier was salacious and verified. He said that in January 2017 to then President-elect Donald Trump at Trump Tower. But months before, in October 2016, he was using that same dossier, the one he said in January of 2017 is unverified and salacious, to get the warrant to spy on Trump associate Carter Page, and hence the Trump campaign. And then Rod Rosenstein, like Comey, he signed off on one or more of these FISA renewal applications. It is one massive, huge, deep state conflict of interest after another. Now, they're protecting themselves. They're trying to preserve their own power. We cannot allow this to happen if we want law and order to reign in this country, if we want to be a constitutional republic. We've got to investigate the investigators. We've got to literally drain the swamp and the sewer. And that brings us to our special investigation. Who is Robert Mueller? Everybody says he's the greatest guy in the whole wide world. Just trust us. Well, members of Congress, the mainstream media, they've been trying to convince you, the special counsel, he is beyond reproach. Sort of like climate change. Oh, nobody disagrees with us. No scientist does. That's not true either. Mueller is the utmost man of integrity. Well, we've been doing some digging, and we found some things you need to know about. And tonight we're going to tell you who Robert Mueller really is. There's a brand new report from investigative reporter Sarah Carter. Robert Mueller's career has been anything but impeccable. One of the worst stains on his record comes from his time in Boston, where he served as assistant U.S. attorney and acting U.S. attorney in the 80s. During this time, notorious Boston mob boss Whitey Bulger, he was actively engaged by the FBI as an informant. The relationship between Bulger and the Bureau was wrought with nothing but corruption and criminal collusion. This might explain why he's best friends with Andrew Weissman. Now, Bulger's FBI handler, a guy by the name of John Connolly, actively covered up for many of the horrific crimes that were committed by Bulger and his associates, including one instance where 4 men were wrongfully framed and convicted and imprisoned for decades, all for a murder it turns out they did not convict. Sounds like Andrew Weissman's record. The men were ultimately exonerated. A judge awarded $101 million in damages, but not before 2 of the men actually died in prison. Robert Mueller was the U.S. attorney in charge while these men were rotting in prison, while certain agents in the FBI under Mueller covered up the truth. Oh, let's see. Andrew Weissman was excoriated by 2 judges for withholding exculpatory evidence. So what did Robert Mueller know about all of this? When did he know about all of this? Now, these are questions and issues I'm sure you have not heard from your friends in the liberal media. Some members of Congress, the media, they're praising Mueller, the pillar of honesty, the pillar of virtue. They've never investigated him. They're actually just lying. It's their talking point. All the information we're telling you about is right there, right in front of the liberal mainstream media, in their faces, but they purposely ignore it because their destroy Trump agenda, that goes above all else. And the reason why is because they want Mueller to carry out this witch hunt, even if there is no evidence of collusion. And now that we know more about Robert Mueller and his past, his current moves now make a lot of sense. Mueller didn't appoint in this particular case. What did he appoint? A merry band of huge Democratic donors. He didn't do it by accident. And appointing Andrew Weissman to be, quote, his pit bull, according to the New York Times, that wasn't a mistake either. Weissman's the type of prosecutor that Mueller wants to try and bring down President Trump with. Weissman has withheld exculpatory evidence in multiple cases. He put the accounting firm Arthur Andersen out of business. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. That obstruction of justice case was later overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. Oh, how often do we hear about 9-0 unanimous rulings? That's what happened. Now, Weissman also robbed 4 Merrill Lynch executives of their liberty. He sent them to jail for a year. That conviction was overturned by the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if you're surprised by any of this, you should not be. Robert Mueller has an agenda. He's carrying out a witch hunt. This is par for the course.